Hello again. Today we're talking about congruent triangles. So we've talked about congruent line segments and congruent angles. Did you know that two triangles can also be congruent? Well, two triangles are congruent if they have three congruent angles and three congruent sides. So you'll see here that I have triangle ABC and triangle DEF. And these two triangles have three congruent angles. Each one has a 90-degree angle, each one has a 60-degree angle, and each one has a 30-degree angle. And you'll also notice from these blue hashes that it has three congruent sides. Line segment AB is congruent to line segment DE. Line segment BC is congruent to line segment EF. And line segment AC is congruent to line segment DF. So that means that these two triangles are congruent, and we would write it like this. Triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. Also, be mindful that if you have two triangles that are congruent, that means that their corresponding parts are congruent. For instance, angle A in our first triangle is congruent to angle D of our second triangle. And angle B is congruent to angle E. Angle F is congruent to angle C. The sides are also congruent. Line segment AB is congruent to line segment DE, and line segment EF is congruent to line segment BC. So here I have two triangles. I have triangle JKL and triangle VWX. And I'm going to tell you that triangle JKL is congruent to triangle VWX. All right, so these are congruent triangles. And so something I want to point out is that all of the corresponding parts of these triangles are congruent. Notice that the first angle in this triangle that I mentioned is J. So if I say that angle J is congruent to something, what angle would it be congruent to? It will be congruent to the first angle mentioned in the other triangle, which is V. So angle V. If I want to know what angle is congruent to angle W? Well, I see that angle W is the second angle mentioned when naming these angles, so I would say that that is congruent to angle K. What about line segments? What line segment is congruent to WX? Well, WX would be congruent to KL. What about line segment JL, this one right here? Which line segment is congruent to line segment JL? Well, I would say that that would be line segment VX. And a way that I can tell that is that my line segment is named for the first and the third angle when naming that triangle. So I will name the other one as the first and the third angle of the triangle. And that's how you find corresponding parts of congruent triangles. So here we know that triangle JKL is congruent to triangle VWX. So what we know about congruent triangles, we can actually use that information to find the length of some line segments and some measures of angles. For instance, what if I want to know what is the measure of angle J? So what is the measure of this angle right here? Well, the corresponding angle in the other triangle is angle V, and we know that angle V is 45 degrees. So I can say that the measure of angle J is 45 degrees. What if I wanted to know the measure of line segment LK? So what is the measure of this line segment here? Well, the corresponding line segment in the other triangle would be XW, and XW is 7. So I would say that LK is 7. Now, what if I wanted to find the measure of angle X? Well, the way I would do that is I would realize that angle V is 45 and angle W is 80 because angle W's corresponding angle is angle K. And then what I would do is I would realize that angle X, which we'll call X, if I add that to 80 plus 45, well, that equals 180 degrees because every triangle adds up to 180 degrees. So that means that X plus 125 equals 180, and I'll subtract 125. That means that angle X is 55 degrees. So angle X is 55 degrees. And that is how you use congruent triangles to find the lengths of sides and the angles of a triangle. Hope that helps.